My bride arrived drunk at our wedding crying for her ex and confessed she still loves him. My name is Will. I'm 29 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I had my life more or less figured out. Not perfect, but on the right track. I had been in a relationship with Damie, my 28-year-old girlfriend, for 6 years. And although like any couple we had complicated moments, I always believed that what we had was built on solid foundations. She was the type of person who could fill any space with her energy. She wasn't necessarily extroverted, but she had a presence that made everything around her feel more alive. She was creative, organized in some things, and completely chaotic in others. But she had an impressive ability to turn any simple day into something memorable. I, on the other hand, was always more structured. I planned things in advance, analyzed risks, evaluated possibilities. It's not that I was boring. I simply felt more comfortable with a certain stability. Maybe that's why we fit together so well. She pushed and I balanced. She accelerated and I slowed down a bit. We had different rhythms, but over the years we learned to walk at the same pace. Throughout practically our entire relationship, Damie made it clear that she wanted to get married. She didn't do it insistently or with uncomfortable pressure, but she did mention it frequently, like those ideas that are always in the air. Since she turned 25, she started talking more seriously about her desire to have a formal wedding, a ceremony that would celebrate our story and that, according to her, would be a perfect closure to that dating stage and the beginning of something greater. It took me a while to process the idea, not because I didn't love her or didn't want a future with her, but because I grew up with a more pragmatic view of relationships. For me, commitment wasn't measured by the size of the event or the number of guests, but by daily coexistence, by silent work, by the stability built between two people. But I also understood what the wedding represented for her, and eventually, over time, I began to visualize it as something significant too, not a formality, but a symbol. When we made the decision to get engaged, Amy cried, not in an exaggerated way, but with that mixture of relief and excitement that expresses more than words can. I also felt moved because seeing her so happy was enough to justify any previous doubts I had. That day, we both promised that we would plan the wedding without rushing, calmly, without falling into unnecessary pressure. And that's what we did. For a year and a half, we saved a set amount each month. She cut expenses on things she previously considered essential, and I got more involved than I expected in decisions like venues, flowers, music, and menu. Not because I was fascinated by the organization, but because I wanted her to feel accompanied at all times. It was an exhausting process, but also exciting. The idea that this shared effort would culminate in a day we would remember for a lifetime was motivation enough. As the date approached, Amy became more nervous, not in a worrying way, but in that way many people feel anxiety when facing an important event. She spoke faster, moved from side to side reviewing details, and sometimes seemed to get lost in her own thoughts. I tried to calm her down by reminding her that everything was under control, that we had already done the hardest part, and that we only had to enjoy it. She always smiled when she heard that, but also said she didn't know how to process so much excitement. One day before the wedding, while we were in the room that each of us would occupy separately to prepare, she said something I still remember clearly. "I think tomorrow I'm going to need a drink before the altar," she commented with that nervous laugh I rarely heard from her. She said it so lightly that I joked with her too. I responded that if she did, at least it should be good tequila, not the cheap kind that causes more problems than solutions. We both laughed. I never interpreted that comment as a real alarm, nor as something that would affect the day. I thought it was just a release, a funny exaggeration to reduce tension. It was normal for her to be anxious. After all, it was an event she had been waiting for years. The wedding morning arrived faster than I imagined. I didn't sleep much the night before, not because of negative nerves, but because my head was full of images of everything we had built. I wasn't aware of the tiredness. The adrenaline of the day kept me clear, awake, almost euphoric. I had the suit hanging in front of me while I got ready, and I repeated to myself that this day would be perfect. And even though it sounds naive, I really believed it. The hall where the civil ceremony and reception would take place was spacious, with high ceilings and enormous windows that let in warm light. We chose neutral colors for the decoration because we both wanted something simple, nothing overloaded. Everything was in order. The soft music, the coordinators checking every detail, the guests arriving little by little, friends, family, people who had been part of our story in different ways. Everyone was there waiting to see us take that step. I was already dressed, standing, greeting those who approached. Every hug, every congratulation, every comment about how good the place looked reinforced the feeling that we had done things right, that so much effort had been worth it. The minutes passed, and although the nerves were present, they were good nerves, kind kind that accompany great moments. Amy's family began to arrive. Her mother, always so kind, hugged me tightly, as if she wanted to transmit tranquility to me. Her father, more reserved, patted me on the back and told me he was proud that his daughter had found someone like me. Those words, coming from him, meant a lot because he was a difficult person to impress. But while I watched the guests settle in, I couldn't help but glance toward the entrance. Not because I expected to see her enter like that without warning, but because the time when she should be ready to start the pre-ceremony photographs had already passed. No one had told me anything, so I assumed everything was in order, that she was just taking a little longer with makeup or hair. It was normal. Sometimes things take time, especially on such important days. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. And tell me in the comments, have you ever witnessed something unexpected at a wedding? But the minutes kept advancing. 10, 15, 20. The coordinators began to exchange glances with each other. Those discreet looks that try not to cause alarm, but reveal that something isn't going according to plan. One of them approached me with a kind smile, but with obvious tension behind her eyes. Everything is fine, she told me. We're just checking that the bride is ready. Sometimes hair or the dress can delay things a bit. I nodded without giving it too much importance. If there was anything I had learned in this whole process, it was that pre-ceremony stress was almost inevitable. I assured her there was no problem and that I could wait as long as necessary. However, within a few minutes, one of Damie's bridesmaids approached me with her phone in hand. I recognized her expression. She was trying to stay calm, but there was something in her look, a kind of contained worry. "Hey, Will, have you talked to Damie?" she asked. I shook my head. We hadn't spoken since the morning when each of us headed to the corresponding room to prepare. That was part of the plan. We wanted the first encounter of the day to be at the altar. The bridesmaid swallowed before continuing. "It's just that she's not answering. And the girls who were with her say she left the room a while ago, but no one has seen her since then." I felt a pang in my stomach. It wasn't fear yet, but an uncomfortable sensation, as if the air around had changed density. "What do you mean she left?" I asked. "Left where?" "We don't know. They just said she got up, said she needed a minute, and left the room. They thought she would go to the bathroom or talk to one of the coordinators. She didn't come back." I tried to stay calm. I didn't want panic to spread, neither in them nor in me. I took a deep breath, assuming it was just a moment of pre-wedding tension. Maybe she needed air, perhaps a brief space to calm down. She wouldn't be the first bride to do so. It was understandable. "I'm going to wait a bit," I responded. "I'm sure she'll appear any moment. Let me know if you find out anything." The bridesmaids nodded and walked away whispering. I stayed there looking toward the entrance of the hall, as if the simple act of observing with enough intensity could make her appear. Time began to feel different. It didn't advance normally, but in irregular lapses, where some seconds seemed eternal and others passed without me being able to register them. The coordinator came back to approach me, this time with less control over her nervousness. "We're looking for the bride," she said. "As soon as we know something, we'll let you know." I had to lean on one of the nearby tables to stabilize myself, not because I was dizzy, but because my whole body seemed to tense involuntarily. I took another deep breath, trying to control myself. I repeated to myself that everything had a logical explanation, that Damie wasn't irresponsible, that she would never do this to me, that she was simply taking longer than expected. I tried not to think about her comment from the day before about having a drink before the altar. She had said it as a joke. It had to have been a joke. The guests began to notice that something wasn't right. The murmurs grew. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with concern. Ceremony staff, photographers, and family members exchanged glances as if everyone was waiting for a signal that would clarify what was happening. And then, when I no longer knew if I was thinking clearly or simply trying to calm myself with excuses, I heard someone say, "I think she's arrived." I turned immediately toward the entrance, and when it seemed she wouldn't appear, there she was. Damie. But there was something strange. Damie was there, but not as I had imagined her during all the months we spent planning our wedding. She wasn't walking with a trembling smile from nerves, nor with that look full of excitement that she had rehearsed so many times in front of the mirror. She was staggering, literally staggering. She was wearing the dress, yes, but it was crooked, as if she had put it on quickly or as if something in her body was resisting holding it up. Her makeup was smudged at the edges, and although at first I thought it was because of the rush or the sweat of the day, when she got close enough, I understood the truth. Her face had that wet and cloudy shine of someone who has cried and also of someone who has had too much to drink. And then I noticed it. In her right hand, she had a bottle. It wasn't water or soda or anything that could be justified. It was a half-consumed bottle of alcohol. She wasn't hiding it. She wasn't trying to conceal it. She came with it in her hand, as if it were another accessory of her outfit. As soon as she arrived in front of me, the first thing I felt was the smell. The impact of the alcohol was so strong that I had to take a step back by reflex. Her breath, her skin, her clothes, everything smelled like a bitter and penetrating mixture, almost unbearable in that context. "Will," she stammered my name, dragging the syllables. She was trying to say something, but her voice broke between a contained sob and uncontrolled breathing. She took another step toward me, and it happened. She vomited. There was no time to move away. There was no space to react. She did it right there on my suit, on my shoes, in front of everyone, in a room full of people. At our wedding, the only thing I could could do was stay paralyzed. My brain reacted slower than my body. I looked down, then at her, then at the guests, who at that moment were already openly murmuring. The murmurs seemed like a wave that grew, crashed, receded, but didn't disappear. What's happening, Damie? I managed to say with a trembling voice. She started crying. Not a silent or contained cry. It was a desperate, torn cry, almost shapeless. She cried as if something was breaking her from the inside. No, I'm not ready, she stammered. I can't do this. What do you mean you're not ready? I said, feeling my heart begin to accelerate painfully. She shook her head while tears ran down her face. No, I can't, Will. I'm not ready. I tried to get closer to hold her, but she took a step back as if fleeing from me or avoiding my contact was part of that confession she was trying to release, just as disorderly as the alcohol she carried on her. Amy, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Talk to me. Then came the phrase that pierced my chest. Her eyes got lost as if searching in her mind for something she had been hiding for too long. I still think about him. I felt a void in my stomach. About who? She didn't respond immediately. She just cried. She pressed the bottle against her chest as if it were an object holding her up, and then she said it. About my ex. There was an immediate silence around us, as if the entire hall had been suspended in a single second, as if the conversations, the murmurs, the looks, everything had been absorbed by that unspoken name, by that ghost I never imagined was still living in her. Amy, what are you saying? My voice broke. She kept crying, louder, without control. I always wanted to marry him. Always, she said with painful, brutal, unfiltered sincerity. I always wanted him to be the one standing here. The words pierced me like a direct impact to the chest. 6 years of relationship reduced to a devastating phrase. The guests began to talk louder. Some stood up, others covered their mouths with their hands. Others just watched as obligated witnesses to a tragedy no one expected to witness. At that moment, Amy's father appeared among the crowd. He didn't come running, but with tense determination. His face was red, not from the excitement of the wedding, but from shame, rage, and disbelief. He approached her, and before I could react or ask him to calm down, he raised his hand and slapped her. A dry, strong blow that resonated as much as the murmurs in the hall. The sound was like a detonation. Amy screamed, not from physical pain, but emotional pain. She collapsed even more. Dad, she tried to say through tears, but he didn't want to hear her. What have you done? He spat with fury. What have you done, Damiana? She sobbed more, and then, as if her mind had lost the little control it had, she began to scream. Not just cry anymore. I don't love him, she shouted, pointing at me. I don't love Will. I don't love him. I stayed motionless. The phrase broke me on a level I couldn't describe at that moment. It was as if the air had become too heavy for my body, as if it couldn't enter my lungs. Always I thought he would. She kept crying while mentioning Alex. He was going to look for me. He was going to save me. He was going to come for me. Everyone heard. Everyone watched. Everyone was a witness. I felt my skin grow cold. My body began to tremble without being conscious of it. It was like watching my life crumble in front of me without being able to move a finger. He spoke to me 3 days ago, she added between sobs. He wrote to congratulate me on the wedding, and that destroyed me because I remembered everything. Everything. Amy's father tried to hold her, but she began to struggle. She was lost between the alcohol, the emotions, and that past she never closed. Her mother also arrived with tears of shame and pain, and between the two of them, they managed to drag her toward the exit while she kept crying and repeating senseless phrases, pieces of confessions that seemed to have no end. He was my life, she screamed before they took her out of the hall. He was my life. And so, between screams, tears, bottles, and clumsy steps, they took away the woman who was supposed to be my wife that day. The guests began to leave. No one knew what to say to me. Some looked at me with pity, others with discomfort. Some just avoided my gaze. The hall, which hours before was full of excitement, now felt hollow, devastated, irreparable. I was frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. All emotion seemed to have stopped inside me. I didn't know where I was standing, or what I should do, or how to process what had just happened. My mother came toward me, took me by the arm carefully, spoke to me with a soft but firm voice. She said, "Let's go. You don't have to be here anymore." I nodded, not because I understood, but because my body simply followed the movement she initiated. I walked as if my legs were someone else's. I left behind the hall, flowers, decoration, tables, everything we had planned to celebrate a future that no longer existed. My mother took me home, helped me change, forced me to drink water, talked to me to keep me present, to prevent my mind from getting lost in the shock. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I had the feeling that my chest was being pressed from the inside, as if each breath cost more than the previous one. Every phrase Damie had said resonated over and over again without stopping. The next day, when dawn was barely breaking, my phone rang. It was her. For a moment I hesitated to answer, but my hands acted on instinct. The call connected. Will. Her voice was worn out, hoarse. I'm sorry for everything. I said nothing. I had no words. She continued speaking between trembling breaths. But what I said is true. I always missed my ex. Always. During the entire relationship, I always thought he would come back, that he was going to look for me, that he was going to save me like I was a princess. There was a long silence. I'm sorry for what happened, she continued. I'm sorry for destroying everything like that. I'm sorry for hurting you, but I don't want to keep lying. I don't want to keep living as if as if I had overcome something I never overcame. I still couldn't respond. My thoughts were chaos. I didn't know if I was listening to her through pain or exhaustion. She took a deep breath. I just wanted to tell you that I wish you the best. You're a good person, Will. You deserve something better. Much better. And the call ended there. There were no more words, no closure, just that. That same day I packed my bags. I couldn't stay in the city. I couldn't face the looks, comments, places we had shared. I couldn't handle the shame, the pain, or the feeling of having been made a fool in front of everyone. I left for another city. I started from scratch. I didn't have a clear plan, but I knew I couldn't stay where I was. And so it all began again. A new beginning. Forced, unexpected, painful, but necessary.